Hi guys, Materim here, and I have a special treat for you today. We have my channel's first narrative battle. It's going to be Bretonnia versus the Ogre Kingdoms at 3,000 points, and this is kind of something new too. In addition to a narrative battle, this is also a test battle for a tournament that I'll be going to. It'll be my first tournament. At the end of the month with this Bretonnian player as well. We're both going. So we're both kind of testing out our tournament lists. It's sort of a Brawler's Bash fight using the same rules, which is what the tournament is. So we're going to go ahead and use this as an excuse to do our narrative battle and practice for that tournament. So let's go ahead and get the story started. Alphonius Serpine stared out the tower window that overlooked the river Grimsbury. He watched as a few children ran back and forth from the banks, chasing each other with wooden swords. Their happiness and joy in the mock battle seemed to break the quiet gloom that affected the town around them. This gloom not only covered his hometown, but the country in general. Forsaken by others of the realm, by the king himself, Mousillon had fallen into decay and forgotten within the great palace walls. His family heritage traced back to Maldred himself, but the line lost honor when the pearl of Mousillon was lost. As he stared at the painted portrait of Maldred, the first Duke of Mousillon, around his neck was the pearl, rumored to be given to him by the Lady of the Lake herself. A knock came at his door. "You may enter," he spoke almost in a whisper. The door opened, and his servant Lirana walked in, her auburn locks bouncing up and down upon her gray servant's dress as she moved into the room. "My lord, Lady Chandra has returned, and has requested to speak with you. She seems a bit agitated." "Show her in, Lirana." Alphonius moved over to one of his two chairs sitting in the receiving room, and awaited the night. He had asked her 2 months ago to seek information about the last known whereabouts of the pearl. She was to return when she found anything. He looked to the door hopefully. The door reopened, and the paladin walked in. Standing 5'8" and having the fiery red hair of her bloodline, she made her way over to Alphonius and took a knee in front of him. She bowed her head as she spoke. "My lord, I have returned to you with news. I apologize for the delay, but I had to make sure the information I gathered was as genuine as possible. I traveled through the Empire on the road to the east, seeking those the Empire call the Amethyst Order. They are said to be masters of the lore of death. I was told that they would perhaps be able to speak with those who had passed on. I believe this was the best way to find the location of the pearl. I spoke with a wizard known as Karnath, and after telling him my mission, he agreed to perform a ritual that would allow him to speak to Duke Maldred himself. After several hours of waiting and hearing sounds that rattled my spirit to the core, he emerged with the name Moloch. I heard the name mentioned along the dwarven borders as a leader of a tribe of beastmen. From what Karnath gathered, a battle was fought between Maldred and Moloch. Maldred was defeated and the pearl taken as a spoil of war. The dwarves also told me that they heard that Moloch had been defeated himself by a clan of ogres. They had no idea what clan this was. I believe it is the ogres that we need to approach and see if they still have possession of the pearl. Reports say that the ogres have recently been fighting followers of the god Corn in the north. I believe we should contact one of these tribes and begin our search there. I'll be glad to set out immediately to do this for you, my lord." Alphonius laid his hands upon the Lady Knight's shoulders. "I know you would, my love, but the loss of the pearl was done by my ancestors, and it will be I who needs to reclaim it." Chandra looked up into Alphonius's eyes, seeing the pride slowly return to them. "The ogres respect strength and power. They believe humans to be weak. They will not respect you, my lord, simply by words, only by your actions." "Then, Lady Chandra, actions is what they shall get." Alphonius's eyes lifted from his betrothed to his recent acquisition, recently discovered in the lower chambers. A suit of solid black armor, crafted by dwarven smiths from Duke Maldred, with the symbol of his family line emblazoned on the chest piece. Ready our forces, Lady Chandra. It is to the north where our quest for redemption begins. And the Bretonnians' search for redemption has taken them to lands in the north controlled by the Whitetooth Ogre clan. And here is the board when the two forces meet. Up in the top left corner, you have a normal tower, a mysterious forest directly under that. The lake under that is, we rolled for a mysterious river, but the way we play is you can take a mysterious river as either a river or a lake. So there's one mysterious river in the form of the lake. The other one is in the form of the river. They have a bridge crossing it in the middle. Then a normal hill. The other small lake is actually a weirding well. Then the little wood building and the ogre hut there are both normal one-story buildings. So pretty simple. I think the river on the Bretonnian side splits them up a little bit. But let me kind of do a nice tight ogre pack here in the middle, and hopefully I'll be able to handle some of the powerful units he's bringing to bear. So let's go ahead and get with deployment on the Bretonnian side. So starting on his left flank, he has a trebuchet that the dwarf grudge thrower is standing in for. He also has a unit of 5 mounted yeomen, a unit of Pegasus Knights with full command behind the building. Then he has a gigantic unit of Knights of the Realm. It's 15 men strong. They have the Banner of Chalance, so they can't stand and shoot against them. They have a Paladin there with the Lance of Artois, which is killing blow on the charge, plus the Virtue of the Joust, which lets him reroll misses when he charges. He has his BSB, who has the Virtue of Stoicism in there, that let them reroll break tests. I'm not entirely sure why he did that on his BSB, but okay. And then a Damsel of the Lady behind that with the Silver Mirror, and she knows spells from the Lore of Life as a second level mage. Then he has a unit of 45 men-at-arms, being led by a Paladin with the Shrieking Blade, the Armor of Agaluf, and of course the Virtue of Empathy that lets him join the Knights on Foot. Next to that, he has another trebuchet. And then the other unit of Knights there on the right is Lord Alphonius Serpine, who has the Berserker Sword, Grommel Great Helm, and Virtue of Heroism. And he's leading a unit of 7 Grail Knights, who have the War Banner on them. And there's a Damsel of the Lady there, who is a second level mage with the Lore of Beasts. And on his right flank, he has 5 more mounted yeomen, and right behind them is a unit of 11 errantry knights with the errantry banner and a Damsel of the Lady, who is a level 2 caster of the Lore of the Beasts, and she has a Dispel Scroll. And he also has the Green Knight shown here in the forest, just to let us know that he'll be coming on starting turn 2. Okay, and now on to the mighty Whitetooth clan. Going from left to right, we have 2 Saber Tusks. They are 1 unit of 2 there. Then we have a unit of 8 Lead Belchers, and they're being led by Chog the Toothy, the Slaughtermaster of the Whitetooth. Chog has the Charm Shield, Grut Sickle, and the Talisman of Endurance. And for this game, he is Lore of Heavens. Right next to them, I have 10 Noblars with full command as Noblar Trappers. And behind that, I have the Thunder Tusk. Then we have my 8-man unit of Iron Guts. And in that unit is my Tyrant, Tok'ran Face Crusher. Tok'ran is equipped with the Fencer's Blades, the Talisman of Preservation, and the other Trickster's Shard. Next to him is Gat the Old, the battle standard bearer for the Whitetooth clan. He has the name Death Cheater and is carrying the Rune Maw. Next to that is my unit of 8 normal Ogre Bulls. They're equipped with the Iron Fists for that parry save. And in the center of them is Tokran's daughter, Torga Blackstew, a butcher, level 2, Lore of the Maw, and she is carrying my Dispel Scroll. Next to that, you see another unit of 2 Saber Tusks, and right behind it, my Iron Blaster. And all the way on my right flank is my Stonehorn. Now, just kind of thinking about my deployment and my opponents, I'm actually hoping that I can utilize the terrain and some of my chaff and stuff to bottle his guys up. He has very long units, so he's going to have trouble doing any wheels, and that big unit of peasants is going to be much slower than the rest of his army. So I'm kind of hoping I can just choke him up and use my magic and shooting superiority to handle him. Of course, I realize that the first step in doing that is getting rid of at least one of those trebuchets, if not both. So that's really my first target going into turn 1. And because the Bretonnians pray, I get turn 1 to start. So he gets turn 1, or his vanguard before turn 1 rather, and moved up his mounted yeomen till they were just barely in the range of the stone horde. I'm thinking I needed an 11. I was thinking about restraining, but I decided to go ahead and try the charge, figuring that he'd probably flee, and at very least, if he's fleeing, it puts him out of position, might not let him use his chaff to the best of effect, and that's exactly what happened. He chose to flee, I failed the charge, and he ended up running over the Wielding Well and being right in front of his big unit of Grail Knights, blocking them up. And who knows, if he fails a rally check, he could run through those peasants there, maybe panic them. But being that Lord Serpine, his general, is in that unit of Grail Knights, I didn't think that was terribly likely. So with the rest of my movement, you see that Chog leads the the Lead Belchers up to the top of the little hill. The Thunder Tusk is trying to follow, but I don't want to march him because I still want to get to use the Stone Thrower type weapon he has. My Saber Tusks and the Noblars rush over to block the bridge. I know he's going to have to bring that big old knight unit across the bridge. Maybe I can redirect them, or if nothing else, just put the Noblar speed bump there, and hopefully the dangerous terrain tests he'll have to take will thin them down before they come up to deal with me. And you can see on the right here, I just moved up the Iron Guts and the Ogres as a single line, hoping that that would keep anything from getting too much around me. And here you just get another shot of where I moved the Ogres up. I moved the Saber Tusks up. Not really sure where I wanted to put them, but at least that would give me some options. And if he's still fleeing next turn, would maybe let me flee the mounted yeoman off the board. But really the big thing I was trying to do is make sure I had that very thin, clear line to shoot his trebuchet, because like I said earlier, that thing's got to go turn 1. I can't sit here and take 2 of them at the same time. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. So for turn 1 magic, I decided not to use the Grut Sickle. I was thinking it's early, I don't really want to put too many wounds on my Lead Belchers, and I've got a level 4 to his level 2s, so I should be in good shape. So I proceed to throw out 3 spells during my turn, and he succeeded in dispelling the first 2 by only 1 point. So if I had Grut Sickled, I'd have gotten Harmonic Convergence on my guys and Curse of the Midnight Wind on his big unit of knights there. As it was, I did get Uranen's Thunderbolt off and hit the big unit of knights, killing them, or killing one of them. So then we move straight on into shooting after that lackluster magic phase. And I really want to win the Chaff War, so my Lead Belchers took aim at those mounted yeomen and blew them to Kingdom Come. I did something like 30 shots on them. They didn't stand a chance. And as I hoped for, the Iron Blaster zeroed in on the trebuchet and destroyed it. I did 5 wounds to it first shot, so it's gone, and he passed all his panic checks. So Bretonnia turn 1, my opponent starts off charging his big 15-man unit of Knights of the Realm into the Saber Tusks at the other end of the bridge. I fled with the Saber Tusks, not wanting to give him that much free movement, basically, and the possibility of overrun. So they ran through my lead belchers, but nobody panicked, and the failed charge ends up putting him right at the edge of the bridge here, where you can see. And he succeeded in rallying with his mounted yeoman, which I pretty much expected. Lord Serpine is right there in that Grail Knight unit behind him, so he needed a 9 to rally, so no big surprise. He's just there right in the middle of everything. And the Pegasus Knights fly up over the building and land right here, hoping to come into my flank. Now, I know there's a die there, but there's no reason for it to be. It's not a wound counter or anything, so he got there with no problem. And he just brought his Grail Knights and the peasants up just a little bit. And this is great for me. He's trying to thread them both through a pretty thin area. And that's exactly what I was hoping for. The more he chokes his pieces up, the more I'm going to be able to get in there and mess with him, and then annihilate him one unit at a time, which is my total battle plan at this point. And then here you see he brings up the now rallied mounted yeoman to like an inch away from the Saber Tusks, just wanting to get in their way. And then he brings the errantry unit up a little further to provide for them to be able to charge anything if I do throw anybody at the mounted yeoman this time. So he's coming up as a unit, or as an entire flank on this side, so I think it's pretty strong. And in the holy crap, what is that category, the Green Knight succeeds in coming on the board and comes right out of the lake, which you really can't get any better Bretonnian symbolism than a direct servant of the Lady of the Lake emerging from the waters to smite down the enemies of the Bretonnians. So I thought that was pretty funny. So in Magic, my opponent managed to get the Curse of Anra here off on my lead belchers, and then his shooting, the trebuchets were off by a mile, so we go right into Ogre turn 2. Ogre turn 2, I start off by using the Stonehorn to charge into the Yeoman. I'm thinking, hey, he'll flee again, and I'll double charge with the cats and just get him off the board. He stood. So I was like, holy crap, that was not what I was hoping for. But I figure if I can blow through these guys and carry through, won't have to worry about that flank charge from the Knight Errants, and I'll pretty much be doing what I want to anyway. So just to make sure it happens, I went ahead and charged with the Saber Tusks as well. So it's going to be a bad day to be some mounted yeoman right there. And he did succeed his terror test to not flee. Again, not a big deal with Lord Serpine literally right behind him there. And here you see where the Saber Tusks that fled from the night charge failed to rally and ran right off the board. So Bretonnians shut down my magic phase, and the lead belchers I think killed one of the Knights of the Realm, but no big deal. The big thing that worried me about this shooting phase was I turned my Iron Blaster, blasted the Green Knight, direct hit, wounded, and then my opponent reminds me that he's ethereal and my cannon can't hurt him. So now not only did I waste the Iron Blaster shot, but I have an ethereal knight in my flank, and the only person in the entire army that has magic weapons is Tok'ran Face Crusher, and he's in the middle of the army and can't get anywhere close to that Green Knight. So we go right into combat, hopefully getting some good news there. And as expected, the mounted yeomen were no match for a giant monster, an ogre, and two cats. So they died, and I overran. The Saber Tusks ended up right where they wanted to be, right in the face of the Grail Knights, but not touching them. So they're blocking them up. But the freaking Stonehorn rolled 2 to overrun and move forward a useless amount, and is still within sight of a flank charge by the Knight Errants. So I'm just kicking myself all over the place for this one. So Bretonnia turn 2 starts with the Green Knight successfully charging into the lead belchers. And the Pegasus Knights, they didn't charge, they just flew around back behind there um, to get over there. I think maybe last turn I blasted a Pegasus Knight with the lead belchers. I don't quite recall. But there's still two of them back there getting ready to rear charge anything that the Green Knight can't handle by himself. And the Knights of the Realm charge across the bridge and slam into my Noblars. On dangerous terrain, he loses two of the Knights from the back of this 15-man bus. Not that it's much going to matter. Those Noblars aren't going to be much more than a speed bump, which really has me worried about my flank here. That between the Green Knight and this unit, I've got a lot of pressure coming on me. Since he couldn't charge the Saber Tusks with the Grail Knights because his peasants were in the way, he didn't do that, left them standing there, and the peasants marched up to get out of the way so the Grail Knights could have some room to run. I love this because this puts those peasants right in a pretty easy charge range of both my Iron Guts and my normal Ogre Bulls there. And of course the Errantry Knights easily succeeded the charge into the flank of the Stonehorn. I stayed figuring, well, I had Frenzy, so I couldn't flee at this point anyway, so didn't much matter. That's going to hurt, but I'm still thinking the Stonehorns got it in there to hold on. So I'm not super worried about this yet. Hopefully the Stonehorn can hold on, kill down some of that unit, and just stop them from coming in here and getting to the main center of my force. And here we see that even the Bretonnians seem to think what's going on the left flank is unfair. So the peasants decide to help out by firing a trebuchet shot that drifts right over the Pegasus Knights and kills one of them and puts a wound on the other one. And with no other shooting and magic being a total wash, he rolled 2 on the Winds of Magic. We go straight into close combat. The Stonehorn actually managed to kill 3 of the Knight Errants, which I thought was pretty good. Unfortunately, once you factor in the rank, the banner, the charge, the flank, I still lost by 1, but I held. Main downside is I did lose that Frenzy, so I'm down some attacks, and now I guess we'll just grind. Frankly, I'm feeling pretty strong about the grind. The Stonehorn is toughness 6. The Knights are now down to strength 3, so everything over there is needing to wound on a 6. So I'm pretty sure I've got this. It's just going to be a matter of time. As predicted, the Knights made very short work of the Noblars there, and when it came to make the decision to overrun or not, my opponent measured it and looked like he would end up hitting the Iron Guts, but the way it would go is he'd be in the flank, so it would present his whole flank to the Thunder Tusk that would be right there. So he decided to go ahead and just restrain and let the Green Knight do what he was going to do before he came across the bridge. And as we can see here, what the Green Knight did was nothing short of amazing. Green Knight managed to land 2 wounds on the Ogres, but with that in the flank and the charge, my Ogres lost, and I was within range of the BSB, within range of the General's leadership, and failed 2 leadership tests. So the Lead Belchers, with the Chog of the Toothy in it, got ran down, and the overrun takes him right into the side of the Thunder Tusk, which is going to hold him up and now free the Knights on the bridge to come over whenever the hell they want to. So I realize I have to get the rest of my army out of line of sight ASAP. And Ogre turn 3 presents me the perfect opportunity to do so by allowing me to charge into the peasant block with both the Iron Guts and my normal Ogre Bulls. Figure I can bash through these guys, carry over, overrun him, and be well away from that big Knight brick before he gets to go again. And my opponent Dispel scrolled my Troll Guts, so I go into shooting, managed to thread a cannonball down the right side of his Grail Knight unit, and took out 2 of them, I believe. So better than nothing. I know they're going to get in there basically as soon as they get the wherewithal to deal with the cats, so less of them the better. So we go into close combat, and the Green Knight lays into the Thunder Tusk with 2 attacks. I can't touch him, so he ends up getting charge, flank, 2 wounds, so I lose by 4, but I stick. And I'm pretty sure... I don't remember if I succeeded the reroll to try and face him or not. Probably not, but I was kind of happy that the Green Knight's going to be tied up for a little while longer doing that murdering. And here you see Tok'ra Face Crusher makes way, just owns face on the Paladin in that unit. And between the Iron Guts and the Bulls, we do so much damage to them, they're not even steadfast anymore, and they break. Unfortunately, my Iron Guts roll a 2 to pursue, so it's just enough to put me in the river, which is a river of light, and I get the Briones Time Warp off on them. But the men-at-arms get away, and then I reform the Ogres to see both the Grail Knights and the Errant Knights on the side in case either of them kill what they're in front of and move forward. And here you see I've killed all but the champion and standard bearer of the unit and the damsel that was with them. And the Stonehorn took another wound. The Knights lost this combat, but they held. So, looks like we'll go on to another turn of grinding. So, start of Bretonnia's turn. The freaking peasants rally. They are 1 model away from needing insane bravery to be able to rally, so they do. And the Grail Knights back up so that they're not being blocked up by the Saber Tusks, and will be able to get around to get into a more meaty unit. I'm still not sure if we were playing that whole blocking up thing right with the peasants being there, but my opponent said we were, so we're both... We're not super rules folks, so probably have to go back and look at that. But so he backed up here, hoping to set himself up for next turn. So here, the Knights of the Realm were going to try and charge my Iron Blaster, but they would have needed a 13, so he just decides to go ahead and move them forward so he can get a pretty easy charge on the Iron Blaster next turn. And the last remaining Peg Knight fails his charge against the Iron Blaster's flank, so he moves up 4 inches. It was a pretty long charge, but at this point he just wants the cannon to die. And again, my opponent rolls 3 for the Winds of Magic, so I dispels... He gets a real high roll on it, though, on a regrowth on one of the Knights. I dispel scroll it. And his Trebuchet still can't hit the broadside of the barn, so we go directly into close combat. We end up having a push here with his Green Knight and my Thunder Tusk. He actually only... Or actually, no, he did win by 1, but it was by the one from the flank. So I stuck and managed to make the leadership roll to reform. So that's yet another turn I'm tying up the Green Knight, which I'm feeling pretty happy about at this point, because I can't really do much about him unless I get my general over here. And here I have taken out the Standard Bearer, and so I win by 1, but he succeeds his break check, and the champion and damsel don't go anywhere. So, start of Ogre turn. I charge the peasants with my Saber Tusks. They choose to flee and roll extraordinarily low, and I roll boxcars on the charge, so I run down the peasants and run right off the board. So this is just marking where they're going to come back in on my next turn. And finally, now that things are out of the way, I get the front charge of my Iron Guts into his Grail Knights. I'm feeling pretty good about this. The Grail Knights really aren't all that special when they're not on a charge, and that is a big old unit of Iron Guts. Not to mention I've got my BSB and Tok'ron Face Crusher in there as well. So I'm actually hoping to get Lord Serpine in a challenge and go all cinematic and narrative here and crush his face, which is what I'm known for. And over here, I just turned the ogres to the side to basically get ready for those nights when they're coming. I know I'm going to have something to deal with them. So that's pretty much it. And this is just a better shot to kind of show where everything is at this point. See the Green Knight still down there with the Thundered Husk, and just sort of where everything is in relation to each other. I don't think I did much magic-wise. I think he stopped me again, so I'm pretty much stuck fighting the good fight. And my cannon might have taken off one more dude out of that Knight of the Realm. Maybe that's why I'm showing that picture. And in close combat, the Green Knight finally breaks the Thundered Husk. It's sitting on 4 wounds, but he rolls like crap for his pursuit, so we end up right where you see us, with him an inch behind the Thundered Husk and unable to run me down at this point. And so here the Stonehorn kills the damsel, and the knight breaks. I run him down, but this is while we're moving everything before I actually take that movement. I don't go very far. I'll just be right next to the house that's over there in that corner. And here, Tok'ron Face Crusher calls out for Lord Serpine to stand forth and face him. And instead, Lord Serpine pushes one of the Grail Knights up into the ogre's arms, who is then crushed to death. Now, I'm really not sure why my opponent did that. Lord Serpine has got Heroic Killing Blow, he's got a good number of attacks, and he goes faster than Tok'ron. So really, I think he had a good opportunity there to kill my general, and he didn't take it. He threw in some attacks in with Lord Serpine into the unit, but I think he did 1 wound, no Heroic Killing Blow. And the ogres just put a huge amount of pain into the Grail Knights. I think he lost by like 9, and Broken got ran down. So that was an awful lot of points there. I don't really know if it would have made much difference if Lord Serpine had answered Tok'ron's challenge, but it at least would have been a cooler story. Okay, and start of Bretonnian 6, the Green Knight charges the back of the fleeing Thundered Husk. The Thundered Husk doesn't roll for crap on his flee, and the Green Knight runs him down and ends up all the way on the other side of the right side of this picture. So I'm thinking maybe he'll be out of dodge, or actually maybe this is into turn 4. I don't quite remember. But I got run down, and there goes the Thundered Husk. Nobody panics from it dying. And it looks like I'm at a point where I was taking less pictures, but on this turn 2, the Knights of the Realm and the Pegasus Knight both charge the Iron Blaster, and it had absolutely no hope. It died. The Knights of the Realm tried to overrun, or no, they broke it, and the Knights of the Realm pursued. They caught it, but because of where the Pegasus Knight was, they stopped an inch away, so it doesn't get them out of line of sight of my Ogre Bowls. And top of Ogre, turn 5, I charged in here, and I'm hoping to tear these Knights up. I got basically a full strength unit of Ogre Bowls into their flank. I should be in pretty good shape. And here you see I moved the Stonehorn way over here because, frankly, I'm afraid of the Green Knight at this point. I'm hoping to get him over here so the Green Knight can't get him while I get my general who has magic weapons into position. You can see in the back there the Saber Tusks come back on the board, and the Iron Guts with Tok'ron and Gat in them manage to swift reform and then come up a little closer right next to the well. And I'm thinking, I'm down an ogre, so I'll drink from the well. So I drink from the well, and it ends up making me stupid and unbreakable. So, awesome. So during magic, he uses a silver mirror on my attempt to cast Troll Guts on the ogre, and so we go straight to close combat. I did 3 or 4 wounds on the knight unit and broke them, so he lost his BSB in the banner, and the Blessing of the Lady. But again, I could not roll for pursuit whatsoever, so I ended up getting to the point where you see me, which unfortunately presents a nice fat flank to the single remaining Pegasus Knight. But I was thinking, you know what? Whatever. It's one Pegasus Knight. I'm a big old block of ogres. I can handle that. And turn 5 shows me what a fool I was. This is really the only picture I've got for the turn. He just reformed and moved up his Green Knight so he'd be able to attack me on turn 6. The Knights of the Realm rallied, so they're hanging right at the edge of the table. And the Pegasus Knight charged the side of the ogres. He ended up doing 1 more wound than me. So I was re-rolling, or no, I was 7, but I was outside of the re-roll, and I broke, and he ran me down. So there goes 8 ogre bulls, plus my only remaining magic user, dying to a single Pegasus Knight. The shame. The shame. And top of Ogre 6, I declared a charge with the Stonehorn into that Pegasus Knight, hoping for a little bit of vengeance. He ended up fleeing, didn't go off the board, and I failed the charge, putting me right there. My Iron Guts with Tok'ran in them declared a charge against the Green Knight. Green Knight had to stand because he's immune to psychology, but I rolled like crap for the charge range, and I think I stumble forward like 2 inches. So it's pretty much the end of the ogres, and it's time for Bretonnia to kick it up in that last turn. And so here is the picture at the end of the game after Bretonnia 6. The Pegasus Knight rallied, but if you're anything like me, you're looking at this picture and asking, where in the hell is that Stonehorn? Well, very simple. The only charge that Bretonnia had on turn 6 was a long charge into, well, decent charge, I guess, into the Stonehorn by the Green Knight. I figure I got plenty of room, I'm just going to get away and save those points, so I flee. And I roll double ones for the flee. The Green Knight rolls boxcars and runs my ass down, collecting 250 points. So this is what the game looks like at the end. And really, as we're looking at the board, it's really too close to call, so we had to go to the calculators, and you'll find out what happened in a moment. Tok'ran Face Crusher, the mighty tyrant of the Whitetooth Clan, was pleased. Despite the unexpected nature of the Bretonnian attack, his clan had fared well. He moved amongst the ruins of the battlefield, accompanied by Gat the Old, the tribe's standard-bearer, crushing bodies and discarded weaponry with each step. He looked to their slaughtermaster, Chog the Toothy, who was picking the choicest bodies for the tribe's feast. Even from this distance, Tok'ran could see the hoof-shaped bruises in Chog's back. Despite his anger at Chog allowing the left flank to be destroyed by a single knight, Tok'ran had to chuckle at the memory of watching the Green Knight's steed literally run the bloated slaughtermaster over. Tok'ran's memory was broken by a stifled groan from a pile of bodies. He reached down and grabbed a still-living knight from the pile of dead. Tok'ran had to give the Bretonnians credit. They were tough. For humans. The dying knight coughed. "Where is the pearl?" Tok'ran crushed the knight's head with little effort and looked to his standard-bearer. "Gat, this is the 6th night that has asked about a pearl." "Yes, tyrant," the elderly ogre replied. "But the Noblars have found no pearl amongst the dead. Perhaps they believe that we have it, and they've come here to claim it for themselves." The tyrant's eyes gleamed with avarice. "This pearl must be very valuable for the Bretonnians to have risked so much for it. Perhaps we should search for it ourselves." The standard-bearer nodded. "As you command, mighty Face Crusher." "And Gat," the tyrant added with a cunning smirk. "Spread the word that we already have the pearl. if others are as interested in it as the Bretonnians are. The Whitetooth will eat well this season. So, after totaling up all the points, we found that Bretonnians had actually beaten the Ogres by 125 some odd points. Now, you may be wondering why this slide you're looking at says victory for the Ogre Kingdoms. Well, as I said before, we are doing this in addition to being a narrative battle. This was also our first practice battle for a tournament that is coming up at the end of March. Now, we were playing one of the scenarios out of there, which is a standard battle line with a few other bonus victory points available. You get 400 points if you can get a unit with fortitude into your opponent's deployment zone at the end of the game. You get another 400 points if you have kept your opponent's units with fortitude out of your deployment zone at the end of the game. And you get another 300 points if you've killed more characters than your opponent. So even though the Bretonnians beat me by 125 points, my Iron Gut unit with Tok'ra the Face Crusher was still within the 12-inch unit thanks to that failed charge, within 12 inches of his side of the board, so his deployment zone. So I got the 400 points there. Also, because I had broken the Knights of the Realm unit, both of his standards died out of that unit, so he had no fortitude in it at the end of the game. So the Pegasus Knights and the remaining Knights of the Realm don't matter at all for that. So I got 800 points for those two. And when we figured out who had killed more characters, he had only killed 2 of mine, Chog the Toothy and Torga Blackstew, and I killed, I think it was 5 of his, 4 or 5. Either way, the Ogres won. So once we factored in the scenario victory points, the Ogres ended up winning by almost 1,000 points. So that's where things went. As far as tactically, I like the army I was using. I think the 2 big monsters might be a little overkill, so I've kind of tweaked the list a little bit for the next game I end up playing to take out the Thunder Tusk. I like the Stonehorn. It brings even more stompy to the Ogre army, and I kind of like that. But I'm going to be replacing the Thunder Tusk with some Mournfang. And my biggest concern here is a weakness that I didn't even think about, is with the build as it is, I had no magical attacks other than Tok'ra or the magic missiles out of the spellcasters, which aren't terribly reliable. So, yeah, in this fight, I was fighting one ethereal guy, and he trashed everything he touched. If I'm playing in the tournament and I actually end up going against like vampire counts and has a bunch of them, I'd get wiped off the board. So, strangely enough, I'm actually considering adding Yetis to the army. For the most part, people say they suck, but it would give me a small, fast unit to help deal with ethereals, and the point value is not too bad. So, I definitely like that. We're having a lot of fun with this narrative army battles. I actually got the idea from, well, this is kind of the battles we do and the kind of campaigns we like running, but as far as how the battle reports are done, I got the idea from Lord Tremendous, who is another YouTube battle reporter. He does Warriors of Chaos stuff, is just a blast to listen to. But the whole idea is that one of the players writes the story part that's at the very front of the battle, and the other one writes it at the end, taking into account what happened during the battle. So it gives you kind of a flowing storyline. We'll be doing more of these between the Bretonnians and the Ogre Kingdoms. Might bring in some of our other armies too as the story progresses, but we'll definitely see how things go, and the race for the Pearl is on. Right now the Whitetooth are ahead, but I never count the Bretonnians out. So, had a good time. If you like what you see, please subscribe, like, and thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.